Hello my friends, this is umonox, and in today's video I want to wrap up my time with the TR-8s in kind of like a 30 days review. I must admit I did not have it for exactly 30 days, just like 20 or 23 days or something, but I think I came to grips with it quite good. And yeah, just want to give you a quick overview and some final verdicts from my side. And if this video is helping you out and if you like it, please hit that like button and tell me about it in the comments, will you? Okay, so let's get started. First, basic things, just very basic things. Now we have I want to quickly initialize everything, pattern and kit, so we can start from scratch. So yeah, basic. You have your instruments right here. These are bass drum, snare drum, whatever. You can change these, and you choose an instrument by just selecting it. And in the TR-8 mode, you can actually enter a sequence like this and play it back. This classic 808 kick. Basic parameters right here and everything. And if you want to edit the instrument, you do shift and instrument, and you have yeah, all the parameters which are available for the instrument. And there is something that I want to tell you about this. It's what I found out when you use the Acb Tones. You do have specific parameters for these individual instruments. These differ from engine to engine. I want to quickly show you this. So right here we have our bass drum. This is, as you can see, an 808 bass 2. And it does have tune, decay, attack. Attack is its specific parameter, and when we change this, we can remove the attack or give it more attack. Now if we select another one, like 909 bass, and go to instrument edit, we have this attack as well. But if you go to another instrument like a tom, this is a low tom, instead of attack we now have color. Now tune, decay and color. And this changes the sound of that tom a little, so take that out and bring that in. So you can clearly hear this. Kind of like some noise, or no noise at all. And I don't want to go into everything because this would take way too long. Just as a side note, all these individual instruments which are Acb Tones, they do have these additional parameters. And some of them have more, some of them have less. So this really depends on the machine you have. So for example right here on these hand clap or rim shot, you can see these 808 types there's no additional parameter inside. So sometimes there are also no additional parameters. But anyway, let's take the tempo down a little. That's pretty much the basic stuff. You select your instrument, you hit TR-8 and you enter a sequence like this. And while you're at it, you can see you can just switch between these, and yeah. Also, if you want to add some velocity, you can hold the step down and dial on this accent button, accent knob right here, and you can change the velocity, and it's also reflected on the step. Let's take it down a little bit further. Maybe you can see that this is now lit just partially. Yeah, something like this. This is also quite easy, and we have sub steps available which allow us to do some kind of flamps and rolls and everything, and we can just enter these by pressing the sub button, and now we have this. And if we want to make this faster, we hit shift and sub, and now we have a flam. This looks differently. can take these away. And if I just hit sub and hit that sub button pressed, I can select the amount of sub steps that I want to add. So now I set 1/4 and I can do this and it's faster. And whatever I have placed into the sequencer is kept. So when I now keep this pressed and dial it down, 1/4 is still applicable for this step, but not for this. Yeah, pretty basic stuff actually. And when I hit shift and sub, I have a flam. And this is indicated differently, and it looks like this. Yeah, just some flams, you know. Yeah, also things to mention are these last step features, and this is something quite usable because we can differ the length of the sequence on a per track basis. First, let's have a look at how we apply this. We hit last button, keep it pressed, and now we tap like the 7. Now for our low tom, the sequence only lasts for 7 steps and is then repeated. Have a listen. Yeah, it's quite hard to hear because we just have this, make the step louder. So that's just the last step feature, you know. Okay, so these are kind of like some basic things. I have to figure out, did I miss something? No, not just yet. So this is basically how the sequencer works and how we put in steps and set velocity and everything. And yeah, let's get a little bit more into the more interesting stuff. And what I want to show you is these kind of, just get rid of that sequence really quick. Bring the bass drum in again. And let's select another track, and I go to instrument this time, and I select something right in the back here. We have a lot of different preset samples and things like this. We can select some synth plugs and everything. I just want to quickly plug in a sequence for these because I want to show you something. Have no clue if this sounds cool. Also, let's add some swing. And before we go into all the editing and everything, I want to quickly show you how the sidechain feature works on the TR-8s, because this is something that I've not covered in my recent videos yet. We find these things inside the kit. So I hit shift and kit, and I have my kit settings. And if I go to external input, I can see I have a sidechain source, a sidechain type, and a sidechain depth. Now, for that sidechain to work, it's working on the input. So whatever comes in is sidechained in exactly the way we set it here. And I have my output pair AB, output pair A, assign A. Output 1 and 2 are connected, and they are fed back into the input. And output 1 and 2, they can either be two independent mono outputs, or they can be a stereo output. And this is called assign A in that case, as far as I know. So when I want to sidechain something from within the TR-8s and not something that I put in from the outside, I can do this by go to the kit. And right here we have our outputs. And let's say I want CC, where I have this fancy plug sound on top. I want this to go to our assign A. And now when I do this, this track is going to this output and going back into this input. So have a listen. Because it's going out directly, it's not affected by the effects anymore. Have a listen. So our kick drum is affected, but our CC is not affected. But when I go back to my kit assignment and go to my external input, I have a sidechain type of 1. The source is the bass drum. And I do this, have a listen. Slowly comes in until it's something like this. And we have different types we can choose from. And this is not so bad because this is all independent from any kind of compressor. And you go to this RC track, for example, and choose another instrument here. I don't know, just find something. I have no clue, just something. Something weird. You know, and I go inside the kit and to my outputs, and I select the RC output, and this is cool because I can send it to the same output, so I can say assign A on this one, and I do where is it? Hard to find. Assign A here as well, so let's have a listen now. Weird stuff like this, you know, but it's available, and I quite like this because we still have our master effect compressor available. So let's edit this one, type high pass filter, and just select the compressor itself. Go to kit. This one. And just edit it a little bit. So we go really crazy now. Really crazy. So we still have it available, we do not need to use it for that sidechain purpose. And the cool thing about the sidechain thing is we also have different ways to sidechain, so there are different types. Let's have a listen to these. Sidechain type 3. You can also do something like this. Something like this. So it can get quite interesting. Yeah, so that's basically the way it goes with these kinds of things. This is something I wanted to show you real quick. So let's initialize everything again. Pattern in kit, so we can start from scratch. Next up are some kind of added features that we have. And yeah, there are quite a few, I must admit. By initializing the kit, I've replaced all these instruments again to their default values, and these are kind of like 808 things. Can scrub through that here and see. These are the things that are there. See? And oh, before I forget it, one other thing, which is also quite nice, is some of these Acb tones, or actually preset sounds that are inside, they offer an alternate sound. I just want to quickly show you this. Let's see if we can find some. Yeah, something like this, low bongo HB. Whenever we have such a dash right here, the sound on this track can have two different sounds actually. So it's actually easier to show you this. So we are on CH. Let's play this thing. This is the first sound when I keep this pressed. you hear the second one. And we can also enter this into the sequencer by just doing something like this, and now we keep this pressed and do this. Have a listen. And this applies to everything inside the TR-8s which has this dash to it. So when we change it, you hear that these are affected now, and now we have a sound which does not have a dash, and the step is not triggering an alternate sound. Sadly, it's not possible to do this with the samples. So when we select a sample, there is no way in edit sample or something to assign another sample as an alternate sample, which would make these things really, really, really nice if we would have this, but it's not inside. So we are really forced to the instruments, the sounds that come with the TR-8s. But maybe Roland will do kind of like a software update or something which would allow this in the future. But okay, let's continue. We have these different sounds right here, and we can edit them. And one drawback of the TR-8s, in my opinion, is for the Acb tones, we are forced to a very, 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 very limited set of parameters we can edit. So have a look. I'm on the low tom again. So I have tune, decay, the color, which is this Acb specific parameter, and we are already at the level now, gain, pan, reverb send, delay send, LFO, and the type of insert effect. Just as a quick comparison, I'm assigning a sample now. Let's have a look and check out what kind of parameters we have for our samples. We have tune, decay, now we have coarse tune, we have the rate, we have spread, so some sort of stereo spreading, bit reduction, attack, which is actually a little small attack portion of the envelope corresponding to that decay, hold time and everything. And here's the important thing, we have a filter which is directly inside the instrument itself with all its different parameters, and now we are at level, gain, pan, reverb send and everything like this. So we also have that instrument, that through effects. So we do get a lot more with these samples than we do get with the internal machines, which is yeah, a little bit annoying, I must admit, because that filter, the Acb tones could benefit from this as well, but that's just something to know. And yeah, okay, so while we are at the samples, you can see lots of different samples are inside and everything. Preset samples, you can identify this with the P that is up here. And we can also import our own samples, and yeah, we do this by going to sample, utility I mean, and scroll to sample, and now we can import them. And here comes the bad thing about this whole process. We can choose between file and folder. When we have file, we do get some samples that we have in the root of our SD card, which is plugged back in here. You can see I have two samples inside, so I can just take them and load them. And here's one important thing. I do not have any kind of option to preview these. At least I didn't find options, and I had a look at the manual. There is no way to preview these things. And this is bad, because sample memory is very, very limited in the memory of that TR-8s. So it would be much nicer to be able to preview these samples right here before I import them, instead of having to load them all first and then preview them. Also, when I just have two samples at the moment, and when we have more samples inside of our root folder, to load them, we have to select them all on their own. So one sample at a time only, if we do it with the file method. But now the sample is here. I've imported it, and I can now select it. Okay, that's okay, but Let's go to our utility again and import, and there's another method of doing it. I can also say source folder. And from my earlier videos I still have some samples left here. And inside of this folder I have 11 samples that I've more or less chosen before I made the track. And now I can hit enter and I can import the whole folder. And you can see how long it takes. These samples are roughly, I don't know, I think 5 or 6 or 7 megabytes or something. Just have a look how long it takes. Yeah. Almost there. And we cannot use the TR-8s at the same time. As you can see, every light is going off, and now it's going on again because it has imported these samples, and here they are. I'm on the low tom. So in total I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 user samples imported. You can identify this with the U up here. These are 11 user samples, and now let's have a look at how much space we only have left. So we have 89% free, so 11% of the internal memory are occupied by these samples, which in total have just, I don't know, like 6 or 7 megabytes or something, if we even have that much. So the space is really, really limited. This is something to consider. But apart from that, I quite like how we can work with these samples, because we have, let's just put down a simple sequence. We still have a sequence here. Yeah, let's get rid of this. We go to Shift, Instrument, Shift Sample. We can edit basic things like sample start points. Also, if we keep Shift pressed and dial on the value button, we can change values with a broader value range. So you can see we can do these things and sample end as well. If we ever need this, gaining these samples and choosing a category if we want and name them, which is nothing I want to do right now. In the instrument itself, I don't want to write this because I don't want to keep these changes. In the instrument itself, however, we have all these different values, and this is quite nice because let's have a listen to some of these. Let's start with the spread. You can see some kind of a chorus effect. Obviously for a kick drum this is probably not the best way of using it, but also right here when we choose the grade, we can change the playback rate, you know. And I thought that turning it into the minus direction would actually play the sample backward, but as you can see, doesn't work. So maybe I have to check that out later. Anyway, lots of different options inside, different filter types that we can choose from, low pass and high pass, and attack decay. We can make the envelope work on that filter, so let's just quickly do that. Let's choose a decay and let's actually select the cutoff, turn it down, just so you can see something. And now let's make the envelope work on this thing, or just turn the envelope off and let the velocity work on it, which is actually quite cool because now I can go inside, can turn the velocity all the way up, so filter is fully open. I just quickly, oops, no, that's the wrong channel. Sorry. Oh, no, that's okay. Let's do it like this. Can hear the filters completely up. it's not just different volumes, it's also affecting the filter itself. So let's just go inside and yeah, do something like this. You get the idea what you can do with this. And there are also a couple of other things inside. Filter velocity and everything, which is what we had. We have our reverb send and delay send, which we get to in a moment. And we also have our LFO. And the LFO is something I want to just quickly touch, because we have different values where we can set the LFO to, like filter cutoff, for example. Give this a def. It's probably not the best idea to use the filter cutoff because we are already modifying it with something. So let's use the bit reduction instead, and let's see. So far so good. We can select our LFO destination and we can select our LFO def, but that's it. So where are our LFO waveforms? Well, these are global, they are inside the kit. So I can go inside the kit, let's find them. They are somewhere here. So these are our LFO waveforms. We can choose sine wave, triangle, saw wave, square, sample and hold. And we can make them tempo synchronized, or we can let them run free. This is our rate. If we do a temporal synchronization, the rate is displayed in steps instead. Something like this, you know. It's just important to know that these things, the LFO, you can select different destinations for that LFO for the individual tracks, and also a different depth for them. But you are forced to the same waveform and to tempo synchronization or not, which is global to the whole kit. So whatever waveform we choose for that LFO is applied to all the tracks. Okay, so that's about the sound editing, and let's now have a little bit, I think let's have a look at the effects now. Okay, and here we go again. Next up we have our effects, and yeah, these are actually quite nice, I must admit. So let's first initialize everything again, so we can start from scratch. Let's find it. Initialize the kit and initialize the pattern, so we can start from scratch. Turn the speed down a little. Back with our basic sounds. Oops. Yeah. Okay, so we have a couple of different effects to choose from, and these are separated. So we have master effects and also a set of master FX right here. And we have individual track effects. I first want to go into these track effects, and for this I'm choosing the low tom. Oh, no, come on. No, let's not choose the low tom. Let's choose a rather melodic sound. I think it's sometimes a little bit better to hear these things. Let's just do a quick sequence. Nothing too fancy, you know. Just something. Let's find them. Different waveforms that we have. Yeah, that sounds nice. Okay, let's choose this one and let's quickly assign our course tune to this. Let's activate our motion sequence and let's see. Just very simple stuff, you know. Let's have a look at the effects first. I want to show you, let's see, do we have this inside? Yeah, these are sample based, so we have our filters. Let's first make a shorter step out of this one. So turn the decay down and let's actually bring the envelope in and work on that cutoff. We need more. Yeah, something like this, just so that we can hear the effects a little bit better. Now, inside the instrument itself, we have insert effects, and we can choose between a couple of them. So first effect would be a high pass and a low pass filter. This is something that we do have inside of the samples themselves, so I will probably not focus on these, low pass and high pass as a mixture. So we get a low pass and high pass and everything with some resonance. And we can choose between these filter types. Something to mention is that this is common to all these insert effect filters. No matter if we choose these insert effects on the actual tracks or on the master FX up here. These parameters are the same. So this is our low pass high pass combination filter. Now we have a high boost, which allows us to boost the high frequencies, and we can select our frequency here. Let's see. Towards the higher mids and towards the real highs. Next one is a low boost, which works similar. But for the bass. And next thing is low and high pass boost as a combination again. With literally the same things. It's just that this frequency now applies to both of them. So we select the high frequency and the low frequency that way simultaneously. Yeah, next up we have, what do we have next? Let's check it out. We have an isolator, which is kind of a comp filter. No, it's not a comp filter, it's rather something. Yeah, it does allow us to isolate frequencies where we want them. So by default, we are cutting away the mids. Now we add the mids. Now we cut away the lows. And now we cut away the highs and the mids, and we are left with just the lows and stuff like that. Yeah, so this is the isolator. Next up we have a Transient Shaper, which allows us to accentuate the attack of a sound or just remove a little bit of its transience. So let's have a listen to this one. Oops. Here we have our depth. How much do we want? Let's put it all the way up. And this is our attack now. So we are removing the attack and we are adding it. And we can remove the release or let more of the release through. I must admit, this is probably not the best sound to demonstrate this effect. It works a little bit better on drums. So let's quickly mute this one and let's go to, I don't know, our low tom and do a similar sequence. So we can hear this a little bit better. Now on the low tom it will become very prominent. You already hear it. So this is all the way up. Now we remove the attack. So in the middle it's the default position, and towards the left we remove the attack, and here we add it. And we remove the release or add it. So that's basically the Transient Shaper in action, which is a kind of neat thing to have, I must admit. Okay, so let's focus on that sound again and let's see what's next. We have a compressor. So we can compress individual sounds. Oops. Yet again, works better on percussive things, but you get the idea. Just a compressor for a sound that we have where it makes sense. We can actually push that thing up a little bit. Okay, so what next? Compressor. Now we have an overdrive, which is pretty straightforward, I think. We can select frequency for the high pass filter if we only want the high frequencies to be driven. Overdrive on the high frequencies only. Pre-EQ frequency, pre-EQ level, post-EQ level and everything. And I must admit I did not have a look into the manual what all of these things do, but I assume they do work like a little like a little EQ inside of that drive to better determine the frequencies that we actually want to be driven. But I must admit, I did not have a look in the manual because I'm not a manual guy, so I can't tell you exactly if this is really the case. But anyway, we have a combination of compressor and drive as well. We can select the balance of our compressor as well as the balance of our overdrive with literally the same parameters like before. But this time they are combined inside one effect. So if you really want to drive things crazy, the compressor plus the overdrive is probably the way we go. And we also have a bit crusher with sample rate reduction. And a low pass filter. And that's it. Which is quite cool actually. Okay, so let's finally check what else do we have. And that's it. So we have a bit crusher, we have a compressor plus drive in combination, we have a drive, we have a compressor, transient, isolator, and various different boosts and filter types. And if we have a look into our master FX, this is our master FX, you can see that literally all the same things are inside as well, but with some additions. We have an additional second transient shaper right here, which works a little bit different because it allows us to choose our cue for that. Yet again, I did not have a look into the manual, so I can't tell you exactly what this all of this does. We have to try that out. We have a drive and we have an overdrive right here as well, so this is another effect. Let's have a listen to this one. It's more or less making it louder. It's getting noisy. So if we want to dial that in like this, we would have to, yeah. Next up we have a distortion, we have a fuzz, let's have a look at this one, bring that in. Yeah, it's going really crazy. Ooh, yeah, that's going really crazy. Okay, let's find the next one. We have our bit crusher again. We have a phaser, flanger and everything. If we want to do something like this, temporal synchronization. Quite interesting stuff actually. Also a low cut inside, so we are not affecting the low frequencies. Stereo operation and everything. Yeah, there's quite a lot inside, I must say. And we also have sideband filter types of things, which are really cool. We can do crazy things like this. Now imagine you do this. You know, you get the idea, I think. We also have noise. Let's have a listen to the noise. It's just basic noise. With some color right here, and this is something we could do for a noise sweep, a manual noise sweep. Let's do this. Things like this. Something like this, you know. Different directions. Something like this, you know. Okay, so you can see we are a little bit different, but the things that we have inside the instrument, we do have these inside of the master FX as well. But let's now focus on our actual master effects, how I would call them, the delay and the reverb, because these are actually really, really good. First, I keep the instrument button pressed and I dial on these knobs to define the send level towards these reverbs and also towards the delay. So let's bring these up real quick, but let's bring reverb and delay level down. We find the settings for reverb and delay inside the kit again. So we have reverb time, reverb type. And I had a look into these reverbs in a bit more detail in my other video that I did, where I did these feature comparisons, I think, with the Digitakt. But so I will just quickly go through and quickly show you the sound of these things real quick. So this is Hall. This is Hall 2. That's the plate. And the mod reverb. Room, as well as ambience. Something I want to show you is when we have the plate reverb selected, I think it was the plate reverb, where is a density parameter inside this reverb. First, let's bring the time up a little. Because these reverbs can be quite long. First, let's start with the hall reverb and see how long its reverb tail can become. Time is all the way up. Let's check hall 2. Yeah, hall 1 and hall 2 are relatively similar. I think hall 2 is a little bit brighter. But yeah, now let's check the plate reverb. Let's have a listen. You can see it offers a much longer reverb tail already, and let's now check out the mod reverb. Let's have a listen to this one. This also has a very, very long reverb tail, but I think the tail of the plate is a little bit longer. For the mod reverb, however, to better hear what it sounds like, we would have to work on that cutoff right now to change the sound a little, because that mod reverb has some sort of a chorus effect inside. Let's see if we can make it sounding like this. Probably our instrument is not suitable for that. Yeah, anyway, it's again a little bit hard to hear, but trust me, this has kind of a chorus sound to it, which if you have the right instrument, sounds really, really neat. And one other thing about that reverb, let's quickly choose the plate reverb again. The reverb has several different types. It has a level, which we set up here by default. It has the time, which is all the way up for demo purposes now. We have a pre-delay, we have a low cut, so we can remove the low frequencies and let it just work on the high frequencies. We also have a high cut, which we can set to flat, so it's affecting everything. Also, we can do the same here. And there's a density parameter, and have a listen. I think I have to choose a much shorter time. Let's see. Let's actually choose another. It's the ambient. Let's have a listen. Probably works better with a bit more percussive sounds. Let's see. Do the same thing with these percussive sounds again. Let's do this one. Increase the time. Yeah, you hear the difference. And this gets through with these mod reverbs. So it's washing it away, you know. Yeah, I think one could say that this density parameter is similar to the diffuse parameter on other reverbs. And for some sounds it's really useful, especially yeah, when you actually find the right, you know, yeah, when you find the right balance between these sounds. But anyway, let's go inside here again, and let's now have a look at our delay. We have different delays, and let's go to our kit again. These are again inside the kit. Let's turn the reverb down, and here we have a delay, a pan delay, and a tape echo. So the delay is relatively basic, it's just a delay, you know. We can make a tempo sync, additional level and feedback time. If you choose a tempo sync, this time parameter is now tempo synchronized. We also have our feedback, which we can control on this knob by default. High cut, low, high damp frequency, low damp frequency, you know, something like this. So we can have a high cut. To work on these high frequencies, and we have these dampening parameters. Which allows us to actually remove or to actually lower certain frequencies of that delay tail. These are the things that we have inside. So the pan delay is more or less similar, as you can see. It's more or less similar, but it has an additional tap time parameter, and it does allow for stereo spread. Have a listen. And we can make it mono again. And actually alter the timing of the panning with the tap time, which is based on the actual delay time. We can alter this a little, but we do not have a stereo spread parameter. So there is no way to say, okay, I don't want these delays to be fully wide, I want them to be a little bit more narrow. This is not possible with this one. But yeah, that's just the way it goes. And finally, there's the tape echo. And this one is really neat. I've told you this in another video already. I quite like this tape echo, so let's have a listen to its sound a little. And see what we can do with it. You can see we have separate bass and treble. And we can also somehow determine the stereo spread right here. I think it's quite interesting when we set this thing to tempo sync. Yeah, it's already on tempo sync. Now when we are inside, we can also use it as some sort of a weird and worn chorus effect. As you can hear. Pretty interesting stuff, actually. Yeah, so this is also really nice, and I quite like it. But apart from these other effects that we had a look at, the reverb and the delay, they are send effects. So we do this by keeping that button pressed from the track we want to send into this thing, and you can see when we do this, yeah, I cannot really see it, but trust me, it works. I keep this button pressed and I actually do a delay send as well as a reverb send, like this. Yeah, something, we are on the wrong track. Go inside here. Yeah, okay, so I must admit that I quite like these effects, and they are very versatile, and it's really cool to have them, but we are not through yet. Let's now have a look at some other things like automation and stuff like this. And here are things where I think that the TR-8s is a little bit weak, but we have a look at this in just a second. Okay, and finally, let's have a look at automation and some other things and my final verdict. Sorry, it's getting a bit darker outside. We have a thunderstorm just approaching. I have to really take not too much time anymore. Sorry for the video, which is a bit darker now. But anyway, let's finally have a look at our motion sequences that we have, and we can automate certain parameters on this machine, but only what we can see on the front right here. So these can be automated, these, and I guess these as well. And here are some very weak points on the TR-8s, which I want to show you really quick. So first, let's go in. Let's see what we are up with. We have yeah, we were basically at that sound, and you can hear when I turn the motion sequence on. While we made it, we already did some kind of motion sequences by working on the steps directly. So we kept the step pressed. As you can see, we kept the step pressed. And you can see when I keep the step pressed, I can see where I have values that are changed. So I have values here from that control parameter which have changed. I have a value here which was changed, and a value here which was changed. So this is kind of like parameter locking on the Electron machines, a little bit differently, but almost similar. Now, one thing to mention in that respect is when we play this back and we turn the motion sequence on and off, have a listen. So whenever we turn the motion sequence off, it remembers the last value that it had, and it plays the last value. Once we turn it on, it picks up on the next value change. This is something important to know, and if we have more complex fiddling and everything, this can lead to quite some interesting results when we turn it on and off while we do some live performance stuff and everything. But one thing that I really wanted to show you is on this particular track right now, we modify our chorus tune, so we can actually change the melody of that chord a little bit. Up here I have the tuning, I have the decay, and I have my volume. The volume cannot be automated. So when I'm on that step and do this, nothing happens. I cannot modify it. I can modify the control parameter, the decay parameter, the tune, and I can also modify these things up here. But that's it. And here's one of the biggest issues that I have with the TR-8s. I have a control parameter assigned right now, which is changing, the tuning of my sample. But in addition to that, I would also like to modify the filter cutoff now. So I would hold Control Select and select my filter cutoff here and everything. and think that it's totally cool to do this, and now I just go inside and change the values, but watch what happens. There are already values inside. And watch what happens when I now play back the thing. More or less nothing, right? And the reason is, yeah, we do have a motion sequence for that particular knob, but not for the parameter which is assigned to it. So this means whenever I change my control parameter right here, I'm also removing the automation from any parameter that I had assigned before. And this is really a big drawback. So I could obviously go inside and change these values here that I already have and everything. Of course this works, but when I change it back to my course tune, it sounds totally weird now. Have a listen. Or it doesn't actually have an effect at all, since these values are different for course tune as well as filter cutoff. They scale differently, so to say. So sometimes it picks up this thing, but sometimes it also doesn't. But never mind, this is it doesn't really matter if scaling or not. This really doesn't matter. What matters is that we cannot have multiple control parameter automation tracks, so to say. So it's only what we have here, and this is a very, very big limitation on the TR-8s, and I really hope that Roland gets this sorted out, because I mean, it's already nasty to always assign these different parameters to the control knob here, but I would at least expect that whatever I have assigned here keeps its automation data, so I can move on to the next parameter and everything. This would be quite important, and this is the biggest drawback on the TR-8s, in my opinion, and something that I really wanted to show you. Yeah, but anyway, let's move on. And one final thing that I wanted to show you, we also have the option to record via USB and everything. This is what I'm doing right now. I'm recording the main out via USB. And I can also, inside the kit, I have the option to select these different outputs for, yeah, right here for my individual instruments. So BD output, which is this track, this can go to assign 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These are the 6 individual outputs on the back, and these are also available via USB. And assign A, B, and C makes these 6 individual outputs 3 stereo outputs. And we are free to assign whatever we want. So I'm on the BD track now. Now I'm on the SD track. I can actually assign it to the same output if I want to. You can see this is just freely assignable, and I've tested it out in Ableton Live and recorded all the all these 6 mono outputs at the same time with the Roland driver itself. As you can see, it records just fine. Yeah, and if we play it back, you can hear it's also synchronized and doesn't have any kind of audio glitches or something inside. So it does in fact work quite well. I have to admit, however, that I've recorded this with 256 samples. So if I'm going further down the line and move towards 64 or even 32 samples or something, I don't know if this is really working. I've just not tested it out. But if we just want to make our track on the TR-8s and then put all of these things out to their individual outputs and record them straight away for further processing in the DAW, I think this is fine. This works if we see it from the perspective of just using this machine, you know, and nothing else. So this works quite nice. Okay, and did I forget something? I think I really forgot something, but we are already on a quite long video. And these autofills, yeah, you can make them automatic and everything, so we can do some kind of fills. Manually triggered, when I have shift and manual trigger, keep this pressed. I can select the scatter depth right here, and it would sound differently. And we can also select auto fill in, let this run for a while. Yeah, this will trigger this fill in automatically. Every 2 repeats now. This will trigger it every 4 repeats. Yeah, and we can even either do a manual scatter effect when we hold this thing, keep this button pressed. We can either do a manual, no, we have to hold this one. We can either do a scatter effect or fill-in effect, something like this. And we would have to choose a fill-in pattern for that. But yeah, I really don't want to go fill-in edit 1, 2, 3. We can select different fill-ins right here and make something, I don't know, something like this. These are additional fill-in tracks, and now I can just just turn that off. Yeah, I must admit I did not look into the manual because I'm not the guy who really needs these things. I do need the scatter, however. I think the scatter is quite cool because we have different scatter settings, different scatter depth. And for me this was already sufficient, but we do have the option to make different tracks, different patterns as different fill-in patterns. I currently just do not have a clue how to set this up, sorry. But anyway, it's possible, and yeah. Okay, yeah, I think we've covered pretty much most of it. There are a couple more things inside the utility. I'm not just going through all these tempo synchronization things and MIDI stuff. What we have, this is something I don't want to go through. We have settings for our LEDs, which I just don't want to touch on just yet because I think this is not necessary. These are cosmetic things and stuff like that. They are nice, but you know, there are a couple of more things inside here, and it really takes way too long to go through all of this. Just as a basic overview, I think I really hope at least that this gives you an overview of the TR-8s possibilities and what you can do with it. My final verdict is, you guys know that I'm very used to the Electron machines and to the very comprehensive Electron sequencer, and in that respect the TR-8s definitely fails because it doesn't nearly allow the depth of these things that we have on the Electron machines and everything. But it's a nice thing, to be honest. I really like this master effects FX stuff right here, things for classic. Just classic things like this, which in a live situation you probably always need. This saves you some additional effect pedals that you might have to plug into the Digitakt, for example, which doesn't have this, or anything like this. I quite like these. Also the effects are really nice, and it's very straightforward. This machine is really, really straightforward. It has a couple of things under the hood, and in terms of features, at least for the sample tracks that use samples, these sound edit parameters are quite comprehensive, I must admit. But yeah, it does get a little bit weird when it comes to these automation things because we are very, very limited in that respect, which is yeah, a bit of a letdown, because if we would at least be able to constantly select other parameters on this control knob right here, while every edit that we made before is kept inside the sequencer, so that all of these can be automated at the same time, this would really make this machine awesome, definitely. But because it is not possible, I must admit, yeah, for sound design purposes and creating some really, really, really nice patterns is, yeah, it's definitely not usable for that kind of things. But anyway, my final verdict is I see the TR-8s as a very nice addition to a live setup that you might have, because it is really, really live oriented with its faders and everything, and with these buttons, direct control over all the necessary parameters that you might need. But when it comes to creating a full and complex track on this machine, yeah, these motion sequences are basically so much limiting that I think it's not really possible to do these things. And yeah, that's a little bit sad, I must admit, because I would really like to have seen that I can select all these different parameters and yeah, actually motion sequence them all at the same time, but this is not possible. If this would be possible, the TR-8s would be this would be a definite buy for everyone, because if this would be possible, this machine would be absolutely fantastic. But since this is missing, we are definitely limited when it comes to creating patterns and modifying patterns and just making patterns come alive, you know. Also, sound switching on the sample side of things is not possible. We do have the option with these integrated sounds to at least have an alternate sound, which is what I showed you before. I just don't find something. Yeah, here is something. We do have the option to choose at least an alternate sound that we can plug in, which is quite cool already, but for the samples we could use this as well. And so that I'm able to at least define an alternate sample for the track, which would allow me to bring in a little bit more life into all of this. And yeah, but apart from that, I must say this thing is really geared towards live performances, and I would also just see it for this as an addition to a live performance setup, but not as a machine where I can just go inside and make a whole track on this and make this track so amazing and so alive with all these different parameter automations that I have and everything. This is just simply not possible. But overall, I quite like this thing, and I would recommend it to everyone who doesn't need a complex and a complex machine in the first place, who does not want to go into these sequencers and do all these kind of nifty edits, who just want to have a few parameters to play with and in an ideal situation control all of these live and everything. I think this is the real application for that TR-8s, and not so much of a sound design machine, but live performance tool, so to say. So yeah, I think that's it. If you have questions or something like that, just post them down in the comments. Or if you say, dude, you've missed something, there is some absolute killer feature inside that you've missed, let me also know, please, because I'm an Electron guy and I just had a couple of days with the TR-8s. But yeah, overall, I must say it's a great machine. And it's definitely something one could have. And if you are not into all these fiddly parameter edits and everything, like I said before, this thing is definitely for you. But do take into consideration that memory for the samples itself is very limited. So you can have gigabytes of samples on your SD card, but you can just load a couple of megabytes into the machine itself. Also take into consideration that it takes quite long to load them, and there is no way to preview these samples inside the sample selection itself right here. There is no way to preview these samples right here, so you always have to load all of them. This therefore forces you to create folders on the machine where you have samples prepared for a track that you want to do. Yeah, okay, so that's it, my friends. Quite comprehensive video today. But I think it's necessary, and I think the TR-8s definitely deserves it, because it's really a cool machine, definitely. Okay, so I would say, have a great day, my friends, and I see you in my next video. Bye!